Hello everyone, this is an English lesson all about how to write a good story. So how do we write a good story? Well, we can begin by thinking about the characters which we want in our story. Now, they might be people, you might want animal characters, or monsters, or aliens. So characters don't just have to be people. Think about their behavior. What types of character do they have? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they good? Are they kind? Are they mean? Are they greedy? Maybe both. Maybe you might have some good characters and some negative, bad characters in the story. It depends on the story you're thinking about. Okay? So, we decide on our characters. Then, we think about the type of setting that we want, the places in the story. Where is your story set? Is it in a forest, a town, in a park, or somewhere else? Could be anywhere, could it? Depends what you want. Could be a desert, it could be outer space, on a different planet even. So, we think about the characters and we think about the setting. Then, we want to begin to build a good story. So, good stories always start with an opening sentence. Introduce the characters and the location or the setting of the story. An opening sentence. Then, after the opening sentence, we start to build up the story. Begin to write about what is happening at the start of the story. Don't forget to use the characters and the settings in the beginning. So once we start to build up the story, a dilemma. That's an interesting word. What does dilemma mean? Well, a dilemma is a problem or a challenge. When you think about the stories you've read before, the famous stories that you've read before, most of them have some kind of challenge that the characters face. So you have to use your imagination to think, what kind of dilemma might they be facing? What sort of challenges would my characters face in my story? Okay? So we started with an opening sentence. We started to build up the story. The characters meet a dilemma that they have to fix. And this is called a resolution. Okay? How do they overcome their challenges? How do they fix the dilemma and the problem in the story? So again, you have to use your imagination to make it interesting. And at the very end, we have a closing. Bring everything in the story to an end and make sure that the problem has been fixed. So there we have it, how to write a good story. Think of your characters and the setting, and then have a good opening sentence with a build-up, a dilemma or a challenge that the characters face, a resolution, how the challenge is met, and a closing at the end. Okay? So, how could I begin my story? Let me think. How could I begin my story? Well, like I mentioned, you could use an opening sentence. Use an opening sentence, okay? What kinds of opening sentences have you heard before in stories? I'm sure you've heard this one before. Once upon a time. A lot of fairy tale stories begin like that, don't they? Once upon a time. Or maybe another good opening sentence could be, a long, long time ago. Or perhaps, on a fine and sunny day. Or your story could begin, early one morning. Or maybe, in a land far, far away. Or it could be on a planet far, far away in the galaxy. Or maybe, right in the middle of a dark, dark night. That sounds like it could be a scary story, right? So, when choosing an opening sentence, it depends on your settings, right? It depends on your settings. For example, If you chose your story setting to be in a desert, it could start like a long, long time ago in a hot and humid desert. If you chose a park setting, your story might begin on a fine and sunny day as I was walking through the beautiful park. Maybe you chose a home setting, and an opening sentence for a home setting could go like this. Early one morning, I jumped out of my bed and I looked out of the window and I saw, for example, if you chose a nighttime setting, you might want to use an opening sentence such as, right in the middle of a dark, dark night, I heard an owl hoot on an old bark tree. If you chose a daytime setting, your story might begin like this. It was a bright and cheery afternoon. So you see, whichever opening sentence you have, it depends on the setting that you chose. Okay? So these are opening sentences for your stories that you could choose from, or you might want to think of your own opening sentence. So, once I've decided on a good opening sentence, how could I describe my characters? Let's have a think. Now remember, what kind of characters are you going to have in your story? Let's take a look at some words. Now, some characters are good, some characters are evil, aren't they, in stories? There's good guys and bad guys in most stories. People that are helpful and kind, and sometimes you get people that are mean and wicked. So here are some words that you could use for different types of characters. Ugly, pretty, fat, brave, tall, short, scary, thin, dirty, cheerful, fierce, foolish, proud, caring, smelly, mean, annoying, polite, generous, poor, rich. So, it depends on the types of characters that you are going to write about. So these are just some words that you could choose from. There are many, many words that you could describe, that you could use to describe your characters, such as sleepy, angry, surprised, worried, energetic, shy, excited, bored, nervous. Take a look at all of these words and think about which words would be good ones to describe your characters in your story that you are going to use your imagination to write about. Okay? So always try to use good describing words to describe your characters. Next, how could I describe my setting, the places which my story will take place in? Let me have a think. So again, it depends on the setting. So if your story is set on a beach, you could use words like warm, sunny, pleasant. If your story is set in a snowy mountain, you could use words like cold, snowy, wintry, freezing. If your story is set in a desert, hot, humid, sticky desert. Oceans, windy, gusty, and stormy. Those are good describing words for an ocean. Spooky, haunted, creepy. Those would be good describing words for a nighttime story, right? Or a story set in the woods. Scary, terrifying. Restful and peaceful, like by the lakes. Crowded and busy. Enormous, huge. Tiny, minuscule. Dazzling and bright, if you're describing the weather in your story. gloomy and dark. Maybe the sky in the story is a gloomy and dark sky or a gloomy and dark day. Quiet and peaceful. Noisy and loud. Smooth, rough, dirty, clean, tidy and neat, untidy and messy. So it depends on your setting. Use good words to describe your setting in your story. There are many, many words. You can pause the video here if you want to get some more ideas about good adjectives or describing words for places and things. Now, when you are writing, please, please, please remember the handwriting rules, guys. Capital letters at the beginning of each sentence. Capital letters if it's a character's name. Capital letters when it's a place. Okay? And there's capital letters when you're writing days and months. Alright? Use plenty of good describing words, interesting words to make your story more interesting for the reader. So you describe your characters, describe the setting, describe how things feel, how the characters are feeling. And use punctuation, like I just said, full stop at the end of the sentences. Now, to make your writing extra, extra good, who remembers what these are? Speech marks, right? Now, you find speech marks in a story when a character is speaking, right? For example, "This is a magical gate," said the wizard. So that would be from a story which has a wizard as a character in it, right? And when we're reading, remember, when we're reading and we see speech marks, it's fun to change your voice into that character. Makes it more interesting for the listener. Now, what else could we do to make your writing extra good? Use a question mark. That would be good if you could write a sentence with a question mark in it. Try to use an exclamation mark when there's a sentence containing some kind of emotion. It could be a happy emotion, it could be a sad or angry emotion, it could be a shouting sentence. A character might be trying to make a valid point, something important. You could put an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence. Okay, so these are some ways to make your writing extra, extra good and interesting. Speech marks, if a character is speaking. Use a question mark. Use an exclamation mark. Okay, so if there's a question or if there's a sentence with emotion. Now, let's take a look at some ideas. You could choose from these settings: desert, park, home, nighttime, daytime. You could choose from these characters. You could include yourself in the story, a wizard, a superhero, a cat, or you might choose your story characters to be a cowboy and a cowgirl. Have some props in your story, some objects. You might want to use dynamite or a van, a key, a map, a web. And here are some ideas for your plot, what's happening in the story. Searching for treasure. Maybe your characters are searching for treasure. Defeating an evil spell. Maybe a wizard or a witch has put an evil spell on some of the characters in your story and they're trying to defeat an evil spell. Finding a magical gate. Maybe you might want to write a fantasy story. Finding a dragon. The teacher goes missing. So these are some ideas of some plots, the things that might happen in your story. You can choose one or you can make your own. Right now, we are going to be working on this. You can write the setting that you chose here. Write the characters that you chose here. Now, it might be one character in your story, it might be more. Write the prop or the props that you chose here and the plots that you chose here. So, setting, characters, prop, and plot. Okay? Now, let's begin to write. Now, here's what I chose. I'm going to give you an example, okay? For my setting, I chose a park. For my characters, I chose myself and a wizard. For the props, I chose a key and a map. And for the plot, I chose finding a magical gate. So I chose these settings, characters, prop, and plot, and then I started to use my imagination to think how I can include all of these things in a good story. And this is what I came up with. I was walking in an empty park. So you can see I described the park here. I used the word empty to describe the park to the reader. It was a windy day. The leaves from the trees were swirling to the ground. Suddenly, I saw something golden sparkling in the bushes. What could it be? So you see, I used a question and I added a question mark. As I crept slowly towards the bushes, I could see it was a shiny key, and next to the key was a dusty map. I picked up the key and I put it in my pocket. Then I unfolded the map. The map showed the way to a secret path hidden in the park. I followed the map until I got to the path. It was a long and twisting path. When I got to the end, I met a short young wizard with a blue pointy hat. The wizard showed me a gate. "This is a magical gate," said the wizard. "If you walk through the gate, you will go to any place you wish for." I told the wizard, "Thank you very much, but I am very happy here with my family and my friends, and I do not wish to be anywhere else." Then I went back home and I told my family how much I love them. The end. So that was my story. I quickly used my imagination to come up with this short story based on the setting and the characters and the prop and the plot that I chose. Now guys, you can have so much fun with this, right? Did you like my story? Yeah, it was okay, right? I think I could have made it even better. I think I could have made the dilemma or the challenge more interesting for the character. And I think I could have made a more interesting and amazing closing to the story as well. So, I'm actually going to have a rethink about how I could make this short story even better. What I want you to do, guys, is to choose a setting, choose a character, some props, and choose a plot. And write them right in here, setting, characters, prop, plot, and then begin to use your imagination to bring these things together to try to make a very interesting, exciting, fun story. It doesn't have to be a long story, just a short story. Okay? So, let's just remember how to write a good story. First of all, you decide your characters. Decide the setting or the place which your story will take place in. Include props, objects. Decide your plot. Have a good opening sentence that introduces the characters and the place. Have a build-up which tells the reader about the characters, tells the reader more about the place and the setting. Use interesting describing words. What kind of challenge or dilemma will your characters face? What kind of resolution? How will they fix the problem, the challenge, the dilemma? How's it going to be resolved? And then have a good closing to the end of the story. Okay, so these are the steps to take when thinking about how to write a good story. Now, the more we practice, the more we get better, right? And I know that you have your own brilliant imaginations. You can do it! Let's go!